In our last lesson, lesson 19, in the book of Revelation, we were in chapter 8 and we did verses 10 and 11 talking about the third angel. And I'm not going to say any more about that now because you can go back and play it if time has gone by and you've forgotten a little bit about that. But we go on now to the fourth angel. And I'm in Revelation chapter 8, and I'm reading verse 12 from the NIV version. The fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them turned dark, and a third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night. Now, compare this verse with the words of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount in Luke chapter 21, verses 25 and 26. And he says, there will be signs in the moon, signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. Men will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is coming on the world, for the heavenly bodies will be shaken. In my mind, there's no question that Jesus here describes the same events that John relates to here in the judgment of the fourth trumpet. But not only is this a literal event, which the sun and the moon and the stars are darkened or fail for a time to give their light, but it also has symbolism. So it's an actual event, and there's symbolism with it as well. The sun, the moon, and the stars are used in various places in Scripture to emphasize earthly authorities. The highest authorities are kings, prime ministers, dictators, and presidents. And these would be portrayed, the major leaders, as the sun. Lesser authorities would be the moon and the stars. And so we see here a hierarchy of authority which it talks about in this fourth thing that we see here. The authority is described here in the fourth trumpet. Now, what does the darkening of these heavenly bodies mean in a symbolic sense? Well, it means that the authorities, the civil authorities, will be morally darkened. The light, which we refer to as truth and reason, will be withdrawn from them. Instead of displaying sound moral judgment, their judgment will be darkened with evil. And so we know that light and dark, we can see that, and we're familiar with those terms. And they will not have exercise any ethical restraint, no compassion, and no justice. People under their government will experience only deceit, cruelty, treachery, oppression, and merciless exploitation. But by the grace of God, this darkening will still be limited to a third. Some restraint of evil will still be possible in these evil times, but only by the sovereign grace of God. In verse 13, that I will be reading in a moment, we're going to see another symbol here. An eagle appears with the message of warning and lament. And it reads this in the NIV version, chapter 8, verse 13. As I watched, I heard an eagle that was flying in midair call out in a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the trumpet blast about to be sounded by the other three angels." After the woes have already befallen the earth, we've seen a lot of woes already. It's almost impossible to imagine what could follow. in the next three trumpet blasts that could be any worse. Yet, as we move on here, we're going to see that the eagle's threefold cry of woe is this saying how it is going to be worse. We see here in this verse, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, or some translations translate those who make their home on earth. It talks about how immoral these people are. People who make their home on earth are moral and spiritual class of people who live only for themselves, only for the present. And they care nothing about the things of God. And I'm sure even today we know people like that only care about themselves. The warning of the eagle is that a terrible doom is coming upon all those who live for the moment, who are selfish. They live for themselves. They have everything's about pleasure. Everything's about me kind of thing. And this is the kind of moral decay that will exist in the day that's described here in this word from the eagle in that day. The first four trumpets, which should have been loud enough to awaken anybody with ears to hear, the message appeared to have fallen on deaf ears among those who make their home on earth. Now the next three trumpets, two of which we will examine in the following chapter, will bring unimaginable woe upon those who live upon the earth and only live for the moment. Okay, I'm going to stop this lesson here. It's gone for 7 minutes. I'm trying to keep them short and sort of bite-sized, and then we can kind of go back and review where they are recorded on Revelation to John on Facebook. So we'll leave it there, and we'll be moving on to lesson 21 in Revelation chapter 9 in the next lesson. Thank you for joining me, and God bless you.